specific attention to how the endings of the words can help us figure out the meaning of the sentence. And also, one thing we noticed yesterday, it took us a while to get there, but one thing we noticed is that we can look at the number of the verb, and that can help us determine what the subject is. Can someone explain what I mean by that, Cole?
If the verb is like singular, then so the subject has to be singular as well.
Okay, if the verb is singular, the subject has to be singular. If the verb is plural, the subject is plural. And that helped us when we had sentences that had words, just for example, like if I had a word like, I don't know, like whereby, and that's a neuter noun. And neuter nouns look the same in the nominative and the accusative. So when I just look at that, I don't know if it's nominative or accusative. But if I have a singular verb like est, for instance, I know this can't be the subject because the verb is singular. So that's one thing that can help us. Okay, so on page 40, let's read about balance. Oh, we also talked about emphasis. And we said that two positions in the Latin sentence have special emphasis. What are those two positions?
That was a total accident, I swear.
That was, if that, I think I believe you, but I don't know why I do, because your hand went like this.
I was raising my hand.
Okay.
I was really excited about raising my hand because I remembered.
Okay. All right. Why don't you, as you pick up the pencil, can you tell me what two positions in the Latin sentence receive the most emphasis? The beginning and the end. That's correct. And if you just have a regular old Latin sentence, what word do you put at the beginning?
The subject.
And what word do you put at the end? The verb. Okay, so let's read on page 40 about balance. And could I have a volunteer to read out loud and to read loudly? Okay?
Just at the paragraph?
Yes.
Alright. Balance. Latin sentences often exhibit symmetrical arrangements and thereby achieve a kind of balance. For example, the placing of subject first and verb last gives equal weight to the beginning and end of a sentence. The use of conjunctions that signal parallelism, such as et also contributes to an impression of balance.
Okay, so Roman writers liked their sentences to feel balanced, and they would do things to make them that way. And so one example is using et and then et again. So then you've got two ets, and so it kind of has the balance because what comes after the two ets kind of balances out. And what does it mean when we have et dot 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 et?
Both and
Both and. Okay, Dylan?
So when they were writing Latin, back when they wrote Latin on a regular basis, they kind of like approached it not as much of like just as mundane as we do, but like a little bit more art forming.
Yeah, that is true, and especially the examples that have been preserved, because the examples that have been preserved are going to be the ones that throughout the years people thought deserved to be preserved, and so that makes them
Right.
they're going to be more arty. But yeah, there were everyday things that were written down, bank records, things like that.
Do
But
you have any of those?
a few, not much, and we have some graffiti that I've told you about before.
Graffiti stuff.
But for the most part, when an author was sitting down to write, or even someone who was going to deliver a speech, who'd sit down and write a speech, they would give a lot of consideration to how to put those words together. Which means that a lot of times the Latin that we read is not really the same as the Latin that was spoken. So beginning Latin students often wonder, how in the world did people learn to speak this way? Well, spoken Latin was likely considerably different from the written Latin, because when you speak, you just say the words that come out of your mouth. You don't give as much attention to it as you do when you write. I mean, you spend a lot more time when you write thinking about, okay, well, what word's going to sound right here? And so written Latin is going to be a lot of times a little more difficult than probably what spoken Latin would have
A
been.
little more technical.
Yes,
Huh?
yes. Okay, Dylan, would you keep reading for us?
Latin writers often achieve balance between contrasting phrases by arranging grammatical elements in parallel sequence. Regina et gladios natis et dona incolis da.
Okay, et gladios nautis et incolis
Et dona incolis
et dona incolis
da.
And then stuff.
Okay, so as you're reading this sentence in Latin, Regina, okay, we see Regina, it's the first word in the sentence. The ending looks what case? Nominative, and it's at the beginning of the sentence, so chances are this is the subject, the queen. The queen's going to be doing something. Regina et
And
gladios, swords, direct object, because it's accusative. Nautis,
Sailors.
and at this point, before we've gotten to the end of the sentence, do we know what case nautis is? What could it be?
Dative, plural, or ablative plural?
Dative plural or ablative plural. Okay, then we have another et, and that's because we have another et, we think to ourselves, okay, well, gladios, nautis, that's probably going to be parallel to whatever comes next. So this was accusative, so probably what comes after the et is also going to be accusative, dona. Now, theoretically, dona could be nominative plural or accusative plural, but at this point, we know it's accusative plural. First, because we already have a subject, and second, because it's parallel to the gladios, which has to be accusative. So we have dona, which means
A gift.
one gift,
Gifts.
gifts, and it's a direct object. Incolis,
Don't know what that means.
it's inhabitants.
Inhabitants.
And now, is
Have
that
we
going?
studied that?
I guess we
No.
haven't. Okay, well, it means inhabitant. It's like agricola in that it's masculine, even though it's first declension.
And it's the same case as
And it's the same case as nautis. So they could be ablative plural, they could be dative plural, we don't know which, but we know they're going to be the same. And then we get to the verb dot. Once we see dot, we suspect, okay, nautis and incolis, what case are they going to be?
Accusative.
No,
ablative.
dative. Remember, look, that's even the word we get the word dative from.
That's the word for give.
It's the word do, forgive. And whenever you see that word, you're probably going to have a dative word in the sentence somewhere. So now we know, okay, gladius and dona are direct objects, and nautis and incolis is who's receiving them, because that's what the dative means. Okay, so now we have a good feeling for what this sentence means. We haven't translated it, but we've read it in Latin, and we've thought about what each word means in Latin, and so now we know what it means. And so we're thinking like Romans, and now let's translate it into English.
The queen and the gladiators give the gifts to the sailors and the inhabitants.
Okay, that would be correct if this, well, first, if this went together. Okay, if it's Regina et gladios, and if this was nominative, and if it meant gladiator. But it doesn't. This is accusative,
This is a little assumption.
and we know that this is parallel to this.
And there are two S.
And there's two F's, so that's a both and an and. So you want to try again?
Yeah, the queen gave swords to the sailors and gifts to the inhabitants.
Okay, that's correct. The queen gives swords to the sailors and gifts to the inhabitants. Now, we want to try to put the both and in there, but sometimes it doesn't sound quite right in English. Having the ets in here just kind of is the signal to you that, okay, well, we've got two things here that are parallel. But you can say the queen gives both swords to the sailors and gifts to the inhabitants. Yes?
For dot, how do we know that it appeals to the queen?
You mean that the queen is the one who's giving?
Yeah.
Well, because the queen has to be nominative, so it's the subject.
Okay.
And so that's how we know.
Okay.
Okay? Because dot could be he, she, or it, or any other singular nominative noun, but because we have a nominative noun, that's going to be the one who's doing it.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Can I have a volunteer to read the next part? Seth.
in the sentence, or
Yes.
in the sentence, the accusative gladios and Jonah and the datives Nautis and Coles and Incoles are placed in a parallel AD arrangement.
Okay, now what he means by AD is that both of these A's are accusative and both of these B's are dative.
Equally common is the arrangement of grammatical elements. In inverted sequence. Regina et gladios, et gladios nautis et incolis donatas. Which is ABBA.
Okay, they also did this. And so here we have our A's, those are both of our accusatives, and our B's, those are both of our datives. So both are common.
I know, but when you translate it, the bottom is different and it sounds weird.
Well, I wouldn't translate the bottom different. Although you could. You could say the queen gave both swords to the sailors and to the inhabitants
That's
gifts.
what they did and it sounds weird.
Yeah. But
So it doesn't matter the order that they're in?
it doesn't matter much. Seth, would you keep reading?
Yes. In this sentence, a grammatical sequence, accusative dative, is reversed and the second time it appears, dative accusative. In this way, the contrasting parts of the sentence, gladios nautis and incolis dona, are balanced against each other. This ABBA, or inverted arrangement, is a rhetorical device.
Good?
Greek letter chi, I guess.
Depends on, I call it chi, but most people would call it chi.
I'll say key. Greek letter key in which the lines are crossed.
Okay, so you have this chiasmus, or chiasmus, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and that's the Greek letter chi, or chi, and if you look at it, you can see why. If you look at the sentence this way, the A's are here, and the B's are here, they're crossed over, and so that's why you call that chiasmus. Okay, let's read about economy. Volunteer to read about economy?
Consider the following Latin phrase in its English translation. Librum poeta.
Okay,
Keep reading.
yes.
Because Latin has inflectional endings for its nouns, and because Latin lacks definite article, b, 5 words and a notation about the syntax are required in English to translate what Latin expresses into.
Okay, let's see what that means. Looking at librum poetae, let's do this the way we did this other sentence. When you see the word librum, what do you think in your head?
Book.
Book. And you don't just think book, you also think
Library.
read. Okay,
It's accusative.
that it's accusative, which means
Book.
Direct
direct
The
object.
library.
Okay, so you think book and you think something's being done to the book because it's accusative. And then poetae.
Of the
Plural
poet.
or genitive.
It's either plural or genitive, but what makes sense right after you see the word book?
Of the.
Of the, okay? And so what does librum poetae mean?
The book of the poets.
The book of the poet, the book of the poet. And not only that, the book, something's happening to the book. The book is a direct object. So that's why it's saying it requires 5 words and a notation. The book of the poet, and that's a direct object. Okay? You need all that to say it in English, when in Latin you just need librum poetae, and that's fine.
That's what I like about Latin. You can like jerk this sentence to this sentence.
Right, and one word sometimes can be translated
That's
as
because like I
bunch
love
of
you
words.
can be expressed in one word. Something like that.
2 words.
2 words. Why?
Well, because you have to have the you in there. Amo is I love, but you have to say who you're loving.
So how do you say that?
Te.
Well, what if you say it directly to someone?
So you just alone by itself is take.
If it's a direct object. I think you need to express what the object
Mate
is.
is what you would say.
Amo te.
Mate.
Or te amo.
Blank.
Okay, can you keep reading about economy?
This comparison gives some indication of natural economy of the Latin language. In general, Latin writers used all of the syntactic features of the language to express ideas in the shortest and clearest ways. A common feature of Latin writing is called, how do you say that word?
Ellipsis.
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 The omission of one or more words that can be easily supplied for content. For example, Nautai, Donum, Regina.
Okay, hold on. Nautai,
Donum,
donum,
Regina,
regina,
dot,
dot.
comma,
Mhm.
poeta librum.
Poeta.
Poeta librum.
Okay. Now, you've probably already read the translation, but let's look at it anyway.
No, I didn't. But
Okay, well done.
The first one is nominative plural, I'm guessing.
We would guess nominative plural because it comes first in the sentence. Okay, let's, in the back of our head, let's think what else could it be just in case it turns out not to be nominative plural.
It could be genitive.
Genitive singular or dative singular. Okay? Donum.
That's you? That's
Yeah.
Means gift. What gender is donum?
Neuter, so it's
Could be nominative, could be
accused.
accusative. Okay, so still don't quite know yet. Regina
That's nominative.
has to be nominative.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes us rethink. Okay, that has to be nominative. The queen is now our subject. Okay, all right. So we've got that
All right.
queen's. All right. Then we have dot. Whenever we see dot, we think we're going to have a word in what case in the sentence?
Dative.
Dative. Okay,
That
so
means gift.
now we think, all right, well, now Ty was probably dative, and now we have a picture in our heads. Who's doing the action? And what is being given? The gift, and who's getting it? The sailor. Okay, so now we've got that picture in our head. Then we've got a comma. And we have just two words after the comma. Poetai librum. Now,
That's the same from before. It's
But it's
the
the
books of the
opposite.
poet.
hey, you had us help out with that one.
it could be, except for the fact that it comes in the second part of the sentence, it's probably going to be parallel to something in the first part of the sentence.
Oh, probably so.
Okay? And so we had here, the sailor was the recipient of a gift.
From
Here, the
Queen.
poet is going to be the recipient of a book. And this is very common in Latin. It's called ellipsis. We leave out words because we already used them up here. We're not going to say them again down here. So it's the queen gives a gift to the sailor,
And
a book to the poet.
And so, and so there's just a comma between those two phrases.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got a little bit more that we're going to talk about probably tomorrow. I need to go get the quizzes for the people